This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, this is Patricia. In this tutorial, I will focus on pivot tables. Some people have an idea that pivot tables are definitely going to be difficult, and I'm going to be honest and tell you that they are not as hard as you think. After I go through a few simple steps with you, you'll come to love pivot tables. Once you get acclimated with them, you'll be just fine. So one of the first things I should point out what a pivot table really is. In basic form, pivot tables take data and summarize it. So you can make sense of it. It's a lot easier to analyze data when you can make sense of it. And you don't need to type any formulas. Now, let me take it back a step. All right. The first step to making a good pivot table is to make sure the data is in good shape. So you need clean data. What does that really mean? Well, you need to name your columns. We call those field names or titles or headers. And you don't want to have a spreadsheet that has a lot of holes in it. In other words, no blank cells, no duplicate rows, no redundant data, no blank columns, no blank rows, and at least 3 columns of data. So if you can remember that, I think you'll have a good start, a great experience. Now, I will switch to another document here. Bear with me for 1 second. That's what happens when you have a lot of files opened up. Now, to get started, let's focus on the columns. They do have names. If you look at my spreadsheet, row 1, columns A through G, those are my headers, titles, labels, whatever you need to call them, that's fine, but you need to have those, and they need to be formatted different than the data. Therefore, the software can distinguish data, separate that from the headers, like store, city, state, region, and so on. So all you have to do is select a cell. You don't need to highlight A1 or highlight all the cells. That's not necessary. You simply go to Insert. Now, they did integrate a new feature in 2013. I actually have Office 2019, which came out October 1st. And it's amazing because 1 minute I had 2016, and then it was reminded me that I needed to update it. And I'm just thinking there's a couple new features, a couple bells and whistles. Boy, was I wrong. So I have the whole new 2019 edition. That's why some of the things you're going to see on my screen are a little bit different looking. But anyway, let's not worry about what's new in 2019. Let's focus on the topic here, pivot tables. Recommended pivot tables is great for someone who doesn't really know where to begin. Okay. Now, I don't want to show you that. We're not going to get into that today. I really want to show you how to build it from scratch, like from ground up. So you activate the button pivot table. Now, granted, you can put the pivot table on the same worksheet. I don't recommend it because it gets overcrowded. And oftentimes pivot tables change. So then you got to keep moving it. So I don't know about you. I'm not into that constant under construction ordeal. So I just like it on a new worksheet, separate it from the original data. So I'll activate OK. And this is my template. And this number just reflects how many times I've done it throughout the day. So unless you shut Excel down, it's always going to have a number. The same thing happens when you create a new blank document in Excel. It's like Word and any other Office file, it numbers it. So let's not worry about that. Now, on my right-hand side of my screen, look very closely. This is my pivot table fields window pane. So basically, all it has are the field names values. All right, that's key. Now, there are 4 areas of the layout area of my pivot table report. We have columns and row labels. That's what they are. Values are generally used for numerical data. So I might want to use calculations. I may want to use some type of a function. Then I have an optional area. So you don't have to use it. It's called filters. So amazing tool. And what you're doing is you're pivoting the data. And basically, when you pivot data, you're moving it over here, then you're moving it over there. And it's an amazing, great way to create a sophisticated report that's a lot easier to understand. So I'm going to take some of these fields and I'm going to use them. The neat thing is you don't have to use them all. So I'm going to add the rep field. And just like that, I put a check mark there, and it automatically will take a field that isn't numerical and place it as a row label. So you don't obviously want to check mark every field except, certain ones like numerical data, because then everything is stored under the rows section. So I don't know, you might want to get creative. You might want to add the line field and then decide, okay, well, now it's getting a little bit longer. Maybe we can make it wider. So you go to the line fields triangle. In this menu, you can move it to like the column labels. And again, it's a label. All right. Take a look at my pivot table report. You got a little bit wider, but it's not that bad. Still better than what we just saw on the original data source. Now, I have another field that I like to search for, so I have to scroll down. There it is. Now watch what happens when I check mark sales. It places it in values. That's the perfect place. Now all the values are stored. One thing that is also automatic, another thing, it's not the only thing that is, you get a grand total, not just for the row, but for columns too. So focus on column E and row 9, you'll see them. Now, how it got the name pivot table is really simple because look, I can take a field like line field and drag it and drop it above or below. See? Move it over here. Let's put it back. You can drag and drop. If you're not like a daredevil, I don't think it's that bad or dangerous, not as bad as bungee jumping. You can click the triangle and, okay, I want to move it as a row label. I want to move it over here. So filters, I'm going to take my field region. You can also right click or use your touchpad on your laptop if that's what you're using instead. And look at this, watch this, add to report filter. So I got a nice sophisticated pivot table. Here it is. So I'm going to end this portion of my tutorial because these files tend to get pretty large. But in my second portion of the pivot table, I'm going to show you some other amazing things you can do with your report and also pivot charts. So make sure you check that tutorial video out. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this short tutorial.